Hello, Julian.
Hello, Mike.
Welcome to Veterinary Ramblings. Tonight, we're going to talk about regenerative farming.
Citizenship.
And why and how we should eat less, but better.
And why we should do everything we can to help Mike's grandchildren grow up in a better planet.
Let's talk to Laura Higham. Hi, I'm Mike Brampton.
And my name is Julian Ho.
Welcome to Veterinary Ramblings. Here we go.
Da-da-da.
Hello.
Laura.
Hello, Laura.
Hello. You're
How are
right.
you? So Laura, thanks for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.
And, you do some really interesting jobs, don't you?
I've got a few, and it's an ongoing sort of juggle, but they're all kind of synergistic and all about sustainability. So I have a consultancy role at an organisation called FAI Farms, the Food Animal Initiative. We're based on an organic farm in Oxford, which we now run regeneratively with cattle, sheep and laying hens. I work there remotely from Sheffield, admittedly, as a veterinary consultant advising food businesses on sustainability policy and their supply chains of food animals. So I mainly look after sort of the animal, the antimicrobial stewardship work stream and some of the animal welfare work too, which is great. I've been there for about 7-8 years now, but yeah, really fascinating job. And I'm doing a PhD on top of that at the Global Academy of Agriculture and Food Security, Edinburgh, on antimicrobial resistance and usage in chicken supply chains, and also looking at animal welfare as well. So again, really synergistic with my FAI job. And then on top of that, we have my sort of volunteer position, I suppose, as a director of Vet Sustain, which is our new social enterprise that we've set up. So we're now a community interest company, limited by guarantee, which means we're a not-for-profit, and we're intending to serve the veterinary professions primarily in the UK, but also beyond, on sustainability practices and policies that will help us to contribute to a more sustainable future, very generally. So exciting times and lots to juggle.
Huge amounts, and so many questions come from that.
Absolutely.
Mike, you had a question instantly, I think, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, regenerative farming. What exactly is regenerative farming? Because you then went on to list a number of different species with different requirements for life and in an industrial sense, giving us different, am I allowed to call it product at the end of it?
Yeah. It's kind of a buzzword in certain sort of circles, and certainly in the farming world it's considered a bit of a buzzword, regenerative agriculture or regenerative farming, but of course to us at FAI it's much more than just a sort of buzzword or a trend. It's something that's actually could provide multiple solutions to many of the challenges that we're facing around food production.
This is more than just crop rotation that I learned about in history.
Yeah, exactly. But it can involve certain practices like that. And there's some that I can give examples of, things like adaptive multi-paddock grazing. So moving animals quickly around the farm so that they're not overgrazing land, but they're also grazing in quite tight mobs, if you like, to ensure that you've got the right trampling and the fertilization of that particular piece of land before moving the mob on quite quickly within a couple of days, sometimes to the next cell, they call it, usually using electric fencing, and it allows the previous cell to regenerate.
Some amazing questions come straight from that. Which, one of the questions is, moving them quickly, that would presumably have an impact on the parasite load of the land, and the parasite re-ingestion.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
for me as a vet, it's great for that. Yeah. So it's potentially a good way of breaking those kind of fluke or with the Helminth or Helminth life cycles. And I think there's lots of potential veterinary benefits as well. So I think vets are starting to get really interested in this, but it's primarily a farmer-driven movement, I'd say. But the whole purpose of the regenerative, I probably should go back a few steps, is literally about boosting the ecology of our landscapes and regenerating them, not just sustaining them. So the word sustainability has been the buzzword of the last sort of decade or so, but actually it's been replaced by regeneration, because we appreciate that actually sustaining the status quo isn't helping us. It's actually not enough. Our current practices are not okay, actually, in some cases. So a sort of ethos of regenerating everything, be it our landscapes, our ecology, our communities, our sort of rural economies, regenerating animal welfare in certain systems. All of this is important, and you can actually embed some of these principles into businesses as well, in terms of regenerating the team. So it can be a really cross-cutting kind of concept, but it's taken hold in the agriculture sector. It's come quite a lot from the States, actually. There's some amazing regenerative farmers there that are seeing great benefits of this type of system, using livestock in the right sort of amounts and the right settings, but also obviously using different crops as well that can be applied to horticulture and cereals production, etc., and often is integrated with different biodiversity features and landscape features like trees and hedgerows, so you can use it agroecology and silvopasture in your practices as well. But it's not unlike, say, organic or Red Tractor or other certified schemes telling farmers how to farm and how to, get these boxes checked. It's the opposite of that. It's actually saying you can do what you want on your farm, do what you want, but you have to be seeing these outcomes happen. And so it acknowledges that in different settings for different farmers who want to produce different types of commodities, they're going to be taking on different practices that are very relevant to their local context. It's not a checkbox exercise, but it's looking at kind of ecological verification indicators, if you like, that tell us that actually this is working for dung beetles and other, other invertebrates and butterflies. It's also working for the sward, for diverse herbal pastures. It's working for the trees and the hedgerows, and it's also working for the farm team, and it's working for the livestock whose health and antimicrobial usage is as good as it can get. And so it's looking at the outcomes very much so, rather than looking at the inputs, which is more akin to what we're used to in agriculture.
It's not like trying to shoehorn an upland farmer into a lowland farming grid.
That's right. Yeah,
It's working with the environment in a controlled manner, almost to mimic, in an industrial way, the natural environment, or what would be there were we not actually industrially farming the area.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Mimic is a really good word, because it mimics natural processes, and it accepts that yes, there's a degree of human intervention there. It's not rewilding, so it's not like the NEP farming estate, which is about rewilding. It's not about meat
which
production.
Is 2 miles away from me down the road.
Oh, is it? Oh my goodness, I'm so jealous. I'm so keen to get there. Yeah,
come and visit.
Lovely part of the world.
Yeah, but it's great. And you're increasing bioenrichment, aren't you, by doing that?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Providing the nutrients to regenerate itself. It's not dissimilar to a nomadic farming lifestyle.
Yeah, that's right.
But just on
and some people sort of arc back to some of those quite ancient practices, and I think there's some criticism, I suppose, from some that perhaps don't understand it, that it's kind of arcing back to an old age of farming and a pre-war and pre-industrial form of farming. But actually it's not, because it's assimilated so much of what we know now about ecology, but also about how we can apply data and technology, and kind of even drone technology can help us to look at the landscapes and see how they're regenerating. We can bring in some soil testing type technology as well, which can ensure that we're testing organic matter and soil fertility and all those things as well. I suppose it is talking a little bit to some sort of practices that have been performed by ancient cultures that know that you have to leave a landscape without a trace in some cases. And I used to work quite a bit in Mongolia. It was an absolute pleasure to work as part of my role in a previous life.
I'd love to go to Mongolia. I read about you wrote a report about Mongolia, which was fascinating reading.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I was thinking of that when you said it.
Yeah, and their herders, I mean, there's quite a bit of desertification there, and some areas that are overgrazed in sort of the Gobi Desert and that sort of thing. But there is also that culture amongst the herders of leaving without a trace. So literally, filling in any holes you make, making sure you're not overgrazing and moving with the seasons so that you are regenerating that land. And some of these principles are very, very relevant to that. One of the, I suppose, a big thought leader in this area is Alan Savory, who did a lot of this work over in Africa, again, moving herds on very quickly to reverse desertification in certain parts of sub-Saharan Africa, using dung from livestock and using this trampling down vegetation to help it to create new organic matter and using that
to rehumificate, isn't it?
To create new topsoil, basically.
That's amazing. And Mike mentioned earlier about the comparison with strip farming and leaving fields fallow. We've got that old word fallow that we've been using very much over the last year, haven't we, in its new form, because furlough comes from fallow. Even back, what was it, the 15th, 16th century when fallow farming first came about.
Hang on, I'll ask my mum.
They really...
I'll ask my mum, hang on.
Okay.
Mum, do you remember in the 15th century?
Yes, dear.
Yeah, she says yes, Julian. You're right.
Great.
You're right.
There we go. There we go.
That's because we're old, Laura.
Yeah. But they knew then that you get depleted nutrients.
Yeah.
And so leaving the field fallow, leaving it to lie.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've not related that to furlough. That's so true. Yeah, I suspect it's not regenerated many souls, this furlough.
I don't think it's regenerated an awful lot, has it? But
this last year.
So that's amazing. And using modern techniques, looking at sensors to look at the biological oxygen demand of streams that run next to farms to see, is that BOD decreasing, or the BOD increasing because of effluent, in which case now it's time to move on because of that. And a lot of farms near us on the Wildbrook system in Amberley have BOD sensors in the water, and they can tell when rainfall is too low for that stocking density, so they know that the runoff is too concentrated, and they move their herds on. But I didn't. So I knew they were doing that, but I never tied them with this word regenerative farming. And I find that fascinating, because that's all aspects. That's fish farming as well, is it?
It can be, yeah. So there's interest in regenerative aquaculture as well. Again, moving away from the sustainable aquaculture world or word. And no, absolutely. I think it's emerging. I'd say that regenerative agriculture is ploughing the furrow, if you like. But yeah, I'm sure it will follow very quickly that we look at aquaculture systems in a similar light. Yeah.
I was going to ask you what got you interested in all this, but I'm fascinated by it now, and I want to get involved.
Yeah. Yes.
We all need to. That's the thing. If you eat food, you need to be involved in the conversation. So it's quite interesting. There's been quite a bit of work around the words. The difference between consumers and citizens, and this is called the movement called the citizen shift. This is slightly off topic, but the citizen shift.
This is veterinary ramblings. There is no off topic.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Let me ramble about this bit for a minute. But some research showed that if you addressed people as a consumer, their answer to various questions about using shared resources are quite different, as in a lot more selfish than if you address them as citizens. If you do address people as citizens, much more likely to demonstrate much more awareness around sharing common property resources than they are as consumers. So there's this whole framing discussion about how we need to frame each other as citizens, not consumers, in the language that we use, because is conducive with a potentially much more sustainable and equitable society. So we do that at FAI using the word citizen in all we do, whereas a lot of our clients will term their customers consumers or whatever, and it's not necessarily the right way to go. So we're trying to champion that as well.
So forgive me for this, Laura. So are you suggesting that simply by framing a title will adjust behaviour patterns?
Potentially, yeah. And it's been shown in certain sort of questionnaires around the way in which you make choices around food or other resources. So yes, it's fascinating, but just starting to change the dialogue in the media, etc., about how we talk about each other. Yeah, it's insane, but people I think people are they're generally good people, aren't they? The majority of people are good and don't want to deprive others of something. And I think these language tweaks can really help with that. As a communication really matter, words really matter in the way in which we talk about some of these subjects that are just so important.
Yeah, this is almost a neuro-linguistic programming thing.
It is, isn't it? It's NLP, yeah. But you can do something similar to that when you have friends around for dinner. You either have the guest round.
Can't remember doing that.
I know. Do you remember years ago we used to be able to do that? You have someone but wasn't actually living in your bubble, and they'd come round and eat actually in your house.
Actually give them a hug.
No, the kids today will never know that. But
so you're suggesting that the guest comes round to eat shared food in your house?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Than the guest
honestly,
comes round
you used to phone your mum again. It used to happen. But they'd come round and they'd eat your food and then they'd leave. Obviously they weren't able to do the washing up because that's just not on, is it? You can't do that because it's not clean.
No.
But actually if you, on the other hand, in the old days would say, come round and share a meal with us, then they'd be part of that. They'd maybe help with putting food out on the table. They'd give a hand with the washing up. And it was very much how you phrased it and how you welcome them into the house and things.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm vaguely remembering, it's a long time ago, but I vaguely remember.
Yeah. I think there's been a shift, hasn't there, from that sort of dinner party mentality of, you know, I guess the 70s really, to now food being much more about just eating a meal together. There's so much more cultural, social factors involved, and that's why I love working in food. It's just so multidimensional, and there's so much to think about and discuss. But yeah, it's a real social process as well that brings people together, brings communities together, and I love that about food as well as just love eating it. To be honest, I'm making it, baking
it's great.
it. Yeah.
Honestly, if I didn't eat, I'd die. I think I really would. But so having a sort of citizenship over eating, I see what you mean. It gets people bought into it.
Yeah,
they're invested
that's right. Yeah,
in the process.
That's where I was going with it.
With
With my cousin, I was saying that actually, you want to get involved with it, you must get involved with it. You can, because now there's, you know, I suppose the supply chain from farm to fork has previously been the domain of big companies and farmers and big companies upstream, but now increasing recognition that citizens are playing a massive part and a massive role in that conversation and driving a shift towards less but better meat, for example, more plant-based diets these days, but also much more interest if you do eat animal-based products in the provenance and animal welfare and sustainability of those production systems, and that voice is increasing in strength, I think, which is a good thing. Yeah.
You've touched on something there, Laura, which I'm going to explode this. Why not? You work in food production, which includes the production of animal protein for consumption.
Yeah.
Now we know, okay, with all of the regenerative farming thing, that there's quite a movement that suggests that we should all become vegetarian or even vegan.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, plenty of thoughts on that, and
that you can share with us.
Oh yeah, exactly. I was going to leave it there. Don't worry. Yeah, it's to be honest, this is probably the biggest hot topic on the Vet Sustain Facebook forum. We've got a Facebook page or Facebook group, sorry, they call the Veterinary Sustainability Forum, and I'd say it's by and large the biggest debate that's ongoing, and we welcome that because there has to be that forum for it. And of course, vets, whether you're in small animal practice, equine or farm animal, you've seen it, you've been there, you've often worked in it, and or you might be a massive advocate for it and all the rest. So we've got a massive spectrum of opinion, but all pretty knowledgeable on it, and all with very diverse opinions. I think I'm quite moderate, I would say, in my views. Worked in the food animal industry, you know, myself from graduation, having been in mixed practice, and then gone through various stages. I guess I worked in the charity sector, primarily working equids, but a lot of those were working indirectly with, you know, the animal source foods sort of sector, and all of that. So yeah, indirectly and directly being involved in it. And I think if you want to improve it, you have to get under the skin of it and be part of it. And I think there is a lot of room for improvement. So my personal views are that food animals play an important role in our global food system, to varying degrees in different parts of the world. Some parts of the world where I've worked extensively, particularly sort of the global south, lower income countries, some of the communities will absolutely depend on animal-based livelihoods, and they're a vital source of protein, vital source of income, vital source of employment, and all of the rest. And they're very multifunctional resources in those settings, and in many of those settings you actually could do with more animal protein going into those diets to improve cognitive function, educational outcomes, certain sort of vulnerable periods of people's lives, such as children and pregnant women, etc. So there are parts of the world certainly where I feel that the animal source foods and foods, animals in the food system are vital. There's other parts of the world, certainly where we live in the UK and other parts of the northern hemisphere, where we've developed our livestock systems since the war, I guess, in a way that's been on a single trajectory towards very specialised, very intensive forms of production, which is contributing to most of our food animal production in this part of the world. And that trajectory has been on a in pursuit of single outcomes, really, towards production efficiencies, which is completely understandable in the sort of post-war era when food rationing was, a very real memory, and food security was a real problem. And I think that is justified. But now we understand quite clearly the impacts and the consequences of increasingly intensive forms of agriculture and increasingly specialised form of agriculture, be it dairy, poultry, pigs, beef, sheep, aquaculture, and some of the smaller species too. And so I think we need to now acknowledge that, we've moved on, and that we need to look at it through a much more holistic lens, looking at not only the economics, but also animal welfare, the social outcomes, and certainly the environmental outcomes of food production, which are becoming a very stark reality. And we definitely understand now that food animals do have a significant environmental impact, and it's understanding where we can mitigate that impact, where we need to reduce production, but where we can also capitalise on livestock, be they again hoof stock or feathered creatures in whatever system. So utilising the right animals in the right systems, in the right numbers, the right breeds, etc., in the right place, to actually help us again to regenerate our food system and our landscape, and still provide that vital source of protein and minerals as well, and nutrients that we know are quite special to food animal products. So I think we've got a big rethink to do, a lot of research to do, and I do think that plant-based, or certainly plant-rich diets are a massive and important part of our future. I'd say that many of us have shifted now towards a less but better kind of ethos around our own personal eating, and if not, some people have gone obviously vegetarian and vegan in the process, which is very, very supported by the evidence. But I'd say that the flexitarian movement and the less but better movement has possibly got the most potential for taking many of us, the majority of us, with them on that journey, without alienating, without compromising cultural values and all of the rest. I think that would be where I would sit, but I do have big sympathies on both sides of the debate, actually. I think veganism and vegetarianism, again, very, 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 very noble, and a great thing to do if that's the right choice for you and your family. But at the other end of the spectrum, those that are massive advocates of a sustainable farming industry involving food animals, that also has a major part to play. Yeah.
Wow. And what about the idea that we should all be eating insects rather than beef?
Yeah,
I'm happy with that.
Oh yeah, what would be your insect of choice, Mike?
Me, I quite like chili fried grasshoppers.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say grasshoppers or locusts for me. Yeah. Really nice.
Have you got experience? You seem like you've got a lot of experience with it.
Nor Delia. Delia wouldn't have cooked it. Mind you, Delia was quite good at utilising a whole animal, wasn't she? But you mentioned something again that's again new to me here. Now this is obviously because I'm a guy of a certain age, but you mentioned the less but better movement.
Yeah.
What is the less? Because I'm a great believer in balance, but you're not going to get me vegan. I was vegetarian for 14 years. I was quite ill. I've moved back to meat, and meat forms probably the majority of my protein intake. But I do like to think of things in balance. But call me old-fashioned or cranky or whatever.
That's it.
That's what I like to think of everything in balance. Leave nothing but footprints, take only photographs. But you mentioned less but better.
So it's all in relation to sort of food animal production and consumption, basically. So even the BVA have put out a statement on less but better, championing this as an approach to mitigating environmental sort of harm, I suppose, as a result of farm animal production, but also admitting, also saying that this is an important form of food production, and that small
I must just say, sorry, but BVA to our listeners who may not be a profession is the British Veterinary Association. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, really good point. Yeah, sorry, I forget that. So the British Veterinary Association is really worth looking up, because I think it's quite unprecedented that a veterinary organisation has come out with that sort of statement. And I think it should be applauded, really. They've also put forward their Choose Assured campaign, which basically follows on from that and says that if you do want to look at your labelling and choose what you consider personally to be better, then these are the labels that you can look out for, and these are the attributes of these different labels. So in the UK we have Red Tractor, RSPCA Assured, we have various organic stamps, we have various Scottish and Welsh stamps for assured farms as well, so you can see what sort of production systems are aligned with your own values, and you can look out for those stamps, which is again really unique, I think, for a veterinary association to support consumer choices around what food they should be looking for on the supermarket shelves.
You mean citizen choices?
Yeah, citizen choices. Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry, Laura.
There we go.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Strike one for Mike. Yay. Sorry, Laura. No, I do apologise.
Do you know what? I recognised and felt myself that I did that, and I thought nobody will notice.
They won't put me up on that.
We're all going to be saying it. We're all going to be doing it, aren't we? It's great.
We need to be. Yeah, we need to be. But yeah, Less But Better is all about the concept, and it's not everybody is behind it, but basically slimming down on your food animal consumption, and when you do choose as best as you can afford, basically, both from an animal welfare point of view and for an environmental stewardship kind of point of view. So there's a fair bit of lots of papers out there and lots of guidance around that. There's an organisation called Eating Better here in the UK, which is a consortium again of food and sustainability NGOs. So a really interesting group of backers that support a 50% reduction in food animal consumption, basically meat, milk and eggs, as part of our choices here in the UK and other kind of Western nations. So quite an arbitrary reduction, I'd say, because it depends on how much your family might eat on a day-to-day basis. But
absolutely,
for lots of us, it's quite a sensible sort of sensible and tangible guideline, I suppose. So yeah.
And I guess to a great extent, you mentioned the poorer countries of the world needing that meat protein more than the richer countries do. A lot of that is to do with education as well as resources, isn't it? And I know that the majority of people who are not well, I'm not talking about you, Mike, but the majority of people who become vegetarian or vegan who are unwell, and I need to clarify that, because I don't have vegans phoning in saying, I think Brenda is a vegan. The majority of vegans,
she's our top fan,
are very, very healthy, very, very healthy. But of those vegans that aren't very healthy, the majority of them are not very healthy because they haven't had the education required to tell them what bits of a vegan diet they should be taking, what they need to have. So they just think, okay, I'll have whatever I used to have, but I won't have meat. And so they still have oven crunches. Other forms of processed potato are available and are also unhealthy if eaten to the exclusion of everything else. And then not having a balanced diet. And so that's part of the problem, isn't it? It's the education to have the knowledge of what you should eat. And we're very lucky. We're privileged in this country. The majority of us have the education to know what we need to eat, and the education as well to know that actually our animals can share with that. And by animals there, I mean our pet animals. So, I want to eat healthy. I want to have good food. I want my dog or my cat to have good food. And if you want to make your cat vegan, then hopefully you're all educated enough to know that actually, no, that's not going to happen. You can't make cats vegan because they are obligate meat eaters. So there is a great need for driving an understanding of eating and nutrition generally, because otherwise what we're going to do is end up with a complete imbalance. We already have an obesity problem in this country and in all of the overdeveloped countries.
And we overconsume protein. That's the first thing. Regardless of what type of protein is in the Western world, we overconsume protein full stop, which means that has resource problems and pollution problems that result. So yeah, we have that to start with. So not only do we need to reduce our meat consumption, many families, many individuals probably do, but we also actually need to reduce the whole lot of protein because we don't need quite as much as we're consuming. There's a very entrenched societal sort of, I guess, norm towards these very meat-based set types of meals that you would feed your family midweek or at the weekend, and it's easy to put together. You've got your central source of protein, be it chicken or whatever it is, and we all are very familiar with that type of meal, and cooking that sort of food is easy. You don't need to think about it very much. You know it's going to taste good if you cook it right, and putting together a balanced vegetarian or vegan meal takes much more consideration and thought around the protein and also the nutrients that go into it. I think it's perfectly plausible, obviously perfectly possible to put together a really nutritious meal and to raise kids on those sorts of diets as well, as long as you're mindful of what you might need to add in there. So I think that's important. And the substitution effect you touch on as well. So if we are going to go for a less but better, or even a plant-rich or a plant-based diet, then substituting plant-based processed foods for your meat is also something to be considered. So some of those, I'm not saying some of those are as harmful as producing beef that's raised in the Amazon, for example. Of course not, but there are instances where some of those proteins aren't produced in an optimal way, and there is a place for regenerative agriculture for all our types of food. So it really is not limited to livestock. It's again horticulture, crops, etc. So there's a way of producing these plants as well, much better, and a way of integrating livestock into those systems for optimal sort of ecosystem health as well. So and touching on again overconsumption, that is one of the many forms of food waste going on. So in certain Western nations, we're wasting half of our food from farm to fork, and a lot of that is on farm, where we sort of lose animals to disease. There's harvest losses, etc. There's pests and all of that sort of stuff. In transport and in processing and in supermarkets, there's a lot of food waste, but also obviously in our consumer kitchens. So it's gone all of that way. It's had all of that footprint. It's had all those people working on it and thinking through it and putting together this food for us, and then it's wasted in the kitchen, which is pretty tragic, really. But yeah, what I was getting at there, I suppose, is that when we overconsume, which many of us do here, that is a form of food waste that needs to go. And our pets as well, of course. Many of us pets. Let's get on to pets. I have got a really amazing cat. Let me just put that out there. Like, my cat is just an absolute a walking example of my terrible veterinary skills. Like, is unbelievable.
Is it not her glands though, Laura? So how do you know, as a citizen who's interested in food, how do you know that food has been produced with better sustainability, with better husbandry, just better food?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So, and going back to COVID briefly, I think COVID has really increased our interest and knowledge as a society on what good food looks like and how precious it is. And again, back to that whole supply chain, how hard it is to, when the shelves at the supermarket were laying bare, and they were for a while, weren't they? Whilst the supermarkets were kind of scrambling to adapt when food was being diverted from the hospitality sector into the retail sector, and we're focused obviously on home cooking and baking in a big way, and milk was being poured down the drains at the farm gate on dairy farms, which was just tragic to see. But those that had contracts obviously with the hospitality sector and with the coffee shop chains.
I've been baking all my own bread since the first lockdown.
Is that 16 kilo? Very good.
My third 16 kilo bag of flour.
Lovely. Oh, it's satisfying. We've gone to those now as well since COVID. It's so satisfying.
So
But,
you've just disappeared off screen to grab hold of a great big plastic bag containing 16 kilos of. Very good. Okay. So,
to show off about his bread
Laura.
baking.
I do apologise.
This is good radio, isn't it? This is good words.
Yeah. I think you're right though. I think it's just so important. But how do you do it? So I think a lot of people are now more knowledgeable about where local food supplies can come from, when those supermarkets were kind of taking days, a couple of weeks to adapt. And they did adapt, you know, and they did it very, very well actually in the end. And but those just-in-time sort of logistics networks that food industry relies on, is there's no slack in the system for change at systemic level. And that's what happened. It was a systemic shock, and it was, and people were obviously panicking. So whilst that settled, a lot of people then went to look for local food produce from local allotments or their own gardens, or looking for the local veg box scheme, looking for local milk deliveries, and all of those. You had a job to subscribe to those if you tried. If you hadn't already signed up, they were just absolutely inundated. And a lot of those subscribers have now stayed on the books for some of these small veg box schemes and that sort of thing, which is just brilliant. And I think if you can do that, and it is a bit more expensive in my experience if you go for an organic veg box scheme, of course, but it does force you to do a bit of meal planning, to utilize local and seasonal ingredients, and it does reduce your packaging and waste as well if you choose the right one. Again, milk deliveries in glass bottles are brilliant. You've got reliable supply. You're reducing your plastic consumption at household level. But I think if you're in the supermarkets, then there's a few things you can do. You do have to swat up a bit as a citizen on your food labels, and to start to recognise what you're looking for. So there are some that are a little bit more tricky than others. And it depends what your price bracket is and what your values are, but you might want to look out for RSPCA assured if you're really into your farm animal welfare like I am. And that's a really, really solid scheme for animal welfare across the board, whether it's dairy, whether it's pork, whether it's chicken, beef, whatever. It's a really solid scheme that's now, you know, it's internationally renowned as being, you know, probably the highest for animal welfare. It's really very good. And there's other schemes in different countries as well, across Scandinavia and other countries that have got these recognisable animal welfare stamps. If you're looking at organic, then there's a number of schemes that you can look out for. So Soil Association, Organic Farmers and Growers, for example, or the EU organic scheme as well, which is kind of the basic organic, and that will give you some animal welfare credentials and environmental credentials relating to sort of reduced use of pesticides, reduced use of antibiotics, and other harmful, you know, potentially other harmful chemicals on the land. And so that's pretty good for a sort of a general across the board sustainability label, but is expensive for some consumers or citizens. And then you've got the sort of baseline sort of the more baseline type of schemes like Red Tractor, which really tells you that the food is produced to a certain sort of pretty basic standard, but does tick certain boxes on animal welfare, antimicrobial usage, environmental stewardship. But again, it's quite basic. So that'll be the scheme that as a bare minimum you should be looking out for. But anything above that you can afford, be it RSPCA assured, be it organic, be it LEAF, which is linking in the environment and farming, that's a really good scheme that's again quite across the board good for LEAF. LEAF.
Linking in environment and farming. LEAF. Okay. I think
I'm losing my confidence there, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's that's another good one to look out for. So, and then you've then got the sort of slightly more nuanced supermarket labels, which might say, for certain retailers, it might say outdoor bred for pork, or it might say free range for pork, and you can then not necessarily see a stamp, but you might see that in the words that's what their marketing claim is, and that means various things for the way in which pigs are produced and the sows are produced, which for me is really important. So the close confinement systems in farm animal production are sort of some of my key interests, and where I would love within my lifetime to see significant change. So we've made great strides around sort of battery chickens and laying hens, and I think a lot of the retailers now, you know, certainly for their shell egg supply, they will only supply cage free, which is great, be it barn or free range. And even the likes of McDonald's, in the UK they only sell woodland eggs that go into all of their sort of McMuffins and some of their breakfasts as well. So there's
are they actually
great awareness around that?
Other fast food producers are available.
Yeah,
sorry. No. That's our buzzword, not a problem anyway. But are they? I'm asking this as devil's advocate. Woodland eggs, is that a gimmick, or are they really guaranteed to be free ranging around a nice little woodland with perhaps a stream running in the middle? And
Yeah, so I'm glad you touched on that. FAI actually did a project several years ago with DEFRA funding, and with a large fast food restaurant as well, looking at the benefits of trees. Yeah, exactly. Looking at the benefits of trees to laying hens, and well, I think it was to broilers at the time, but to chickens basically. And we found at the time that actually providing some form of tree cover, even if it's 5% tree cover on a free range for laying hens, not only obviously had the environmental benefits of having trees there, but also increased grade A egg supply, so increase the quality of the eggs and reduce mortality as well. So just planting trees had these incredible kind of One Health benefits, which should be no surprise if you actually think about the origin of the Anglo-Asian jungle fowl, which is where all of our chickens have come from. That's their natural environment
birds.
Birds, and they don't want to feel threat from predation, from aerial predation. And
so the canopy cover made them feel more secure, and that was it. It was essentially a better quality of life for them.
Much so. Yeah, and it encourages them to range beyond the sort of boundaries of the shed. So you sometimes get these free range systems without trees where the chickens don't really leave the house. So they've got lots of pop holes, but they don't tend to leave, and you'll get a few birds behaviourally that like to range, but they won't be keen to stray too far from the sort of confines of the security of the house. But planting trees helps them to range much further, which is great for leg health and all sorts as well, and can be good for the environment too. But so yeah, it's really important. So woodland eggs is not a gimmick. It depends on the percentage of tree cover, but as a standard, it's been sort of 5% for certain brands and for the RSPCA assured. But to my understanding, it's gone up to 20% now for RSPCA assured, which means greater tree cover. Yeah.
One of my girls
really good.
Range quite freely through the garden, and I found out one day why she was doing this. She was hunting mice.
Oh,
hunting mice.
Wow.
She was hunting mice. She was the one that would catch the mice, and then one of the other girls would come out from the pen, because they'd then fight over the carcass of the mouse.
My goodness.
Gosh, that's interesting.
That's mad.
They're
Killer
raptors.
chickens.
Chickens are raptors. These
yeah, it should be no surprise. Yeah, proper omnivores. Yeah,
Chickens aren't dinosaurs. Let's face it. Yeah.
See. No, I didn't have velociraptors in my house. There were chickens. You saw one. You ultrasounded one once.
I did ultrasound one of his chickens. Yeah.
I mean, this is great because we've covered a lot of stuff that the general population and our non-veterinary friends can get into. Mm-hmm. And you've blown my mind with this regenerative farming. That's just, oh my God, I want to be a part of that. That's just fantastic, Laura. I appreciate you sharing that. But some of a fair proportion of our audience are working in veterinary medicine. They're in small animal practice, or they're in practice every day. And I'm wondering, is there anything you've talked about vet sustain? Mm-hmm. Can we explore vet sustain?
Yeah.
And what we can do, what a nurse can do on Monday morning, what a vet can do Monday lunchtime. Yeah. Because I'm getting the feeling here. One of my big buzz things. I'm now a grandfather. I know it's hard to believe, but I am now a grandfather.
At the age of 20, my goodness.
I know, well, there you go.
People who are listening to this program, Mike, in his first flush of youth, is now a grandfather. It's incredible what cryogenics can do. Sorry, do carry on.
Thank you, Julian.
You're welcome.
Well, I've personally, I share a personal thing with you. I've always been petrified about what sort of planet I'm leaving behind for my children. And now I'm a grandfather.
Yeah.
And that just ups the ante exponentially, because, I can see that before this planet gets too hot, I'm going to be off.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, everybody. I've had my fun. I've driven the big engines. I've traveled all over the world. I've documented the demise of the polar bear. it saddens me. I had those chances. Sorry, you guys, you kids aren't going to get that.
Gonna pick up the tab. Yeah,
You got to pick up the tab. But now I've got a whole other generation. And
how old is your youngest grandchild, just out of interest?
My youngest grandchild is 3 months old.
Yeah, wow. Oh, congratulations. It is scary, and that's this is when the pivotal moment for me happened as well, when I had my daughter, and 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and it's seeing her lifetime stretch out before you, far beyond your own, and realizing what sort of legacy we were leaving, and how we were kind of dragging our heels, thinking, it'll be all right, and something will happen, you know. And the truth is, it can't be left to one individual group. It can't be left to a single government. You know, it's got to be this groundswell. And I think there has been, in the last 18 months, certainly a zeitgeist, thanks to the likes of Greta Thunberg and Extinction Rebellion, that have kind of put a rocket up our backsides in lots of ways. And that's when Better Husbandry also came along too. And David Attenborough, let's not forget good old David. He's incredible, and many others at grassroots level as well. Like it's just, people have been like, yeah, guys, we've been talking about this for a while, and now you're all jumping on the bandwagon with your Instagram accounts, and you know, there's people that are just that are doing incredible work. So and now I'm a relative newcomer to this, but just as passionate. And I think now's the time for all of us to start really shaping up. And veterinary practices are a great place to start that. So if vets are not quite sure how to knit together their own climate activism in their own private lives and their veterinary work, because it is a bit like, how can I make this happen with a veterinary practice and maybe a management team that's yet to get on this bandwagon, and how do I well, Vet Sustain's trying to make that easier to open those conversations. And I'm glad you asked, because this Friday, presumably this will go out well after the publication of our Greener Veterinary Practice Checklist, but we have a very practical guide to how a veterinary practice can adopt more sustainable practices and principles amongst their team, empowering everybody in the team, and starting to take meaningful steps. And it's kind of UK based, I'd say, with some practical independent links to resources that we recommend, but certainly can be adopted and kind of repurposed for vets and vet practices in different countries. So we'll talk. Can
we take a step back on this then, Laura?
Yeah.
So this is an initiative put out by Vet Sustain. Yeah. And you called it
is the Greener Veterinary Practice Checklist. And maybe I should just quickly explain Better Sustain, because we're a collective. Please do. Yeah, we're a collective of volunteers, hopefully soon to be more than that, if we can get going and with funding and things. But basically, we're a collective of veterinary surgeons and members of the wider veterinary community that intend to enable and inspire veterinary professionals, and by that we mean vets, vet nurses, vet technicians, practice managers, all members of the vet-led team really, and wider than that still. But all members of the vet-led team to kind of drive change towards a more sustainable future for future generations, but also obviously for ourselves. And this is for the benefit of the animals under our care, the animals beyond our care, and all of the rest of sort of the natural world as well. So our big issues that we are tackling, the big four, if you like, would be climate change, biodiversity loss, public health issues, very, very current, and animal welfare issues that are still entrenched mainly in our domestic species. So we've got a recognition that the Sustainable Development Goals and how veterinary professionals contribute to those SDGs are all inextricably linked, and we could never really extract climate change from that conversation as a single issue. For us, it's all linked, and therefore we have to tackle them all. We're not saying that we're going to, of course, do it alone. It's all about trying to empower others to make changes. And we're also certainly acknowledging that there are loads of veterinary groups that are working on single issues, multiple issues, and making great strides. So certainly around sort of health and well-being and that sort of thing, around public health, around animal welfare. But would say that some of those groups are working in relative isolation on specific topics. And I think Better Sustain has this opportunity to kind of span across multiple issues and highlight where they're linked, and where vets have a remarkable opportunity as kind of custodians of animal welfare, but also as interdisciplinary practitioners and researchers that understand One Health. And One Health, for your listeners that don't know, is the concept that the animal, human and environmental health are all linked, and you can't separate them. And that's, never more true today, and again in COVID times. So it's really important that we start sort of actually putting these One Health principles into practice, and that's where Vet Sustain hopefully will be operating.
You've just linked environmental health into One Health.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling, I mean, call me naive or slow or some other insult that's appropriate. I don't really mind.
Not at all.
For me, One Health for a long time has been the animal-human health.
Yeah. I must admit, that's the first time I've heard of environment being brought in it, and it makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
It's the whole biscuit there, isn't it?
Yeah, for us it's a triad, absolutely.
Right.
And so you can't.
Sorry, I should say other big crime syndicates do exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, mafia.
Yakuza.
Yakuza. We don't want to be. Yeah, we don't want to be singled out by one because we've mentioned another. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
The Isle of Wight posse.
Yeah.
We don't want to.
Well, they're just across the water for me.
Yeah, we can hear the rumbling some nights.
Oh, they'll be on the ferry. They'll be on the ferry to Portsmouth. No time. Knocking on the anyway. God, jeez. Yeah. But,
I do apologise. Sorry, Laura.
Come on, Laura. You've just brought.
Bring it back to sense.
Laura, you are blowing my mind tonight with great ideas, great things, actions, positive actions that most people will be unaware of that are going on. And for our delicate and well chosen audience, I'd like you to share this stuff.
Yeah.
But to bring environment in,
to talk about it. Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's it. And for us, it's absolutely in there. And there's so many examples of where breaking down an ecosystem or sort of harming the natural world in some way causes the emergence of health or human or animal health challenges. There's just so many to talk about, but yeah, it's all in there, and so sort of fragmenting any ecosystems is going to result in potential human or animal health problems. So yeah, it's definitely in there, and we feel a duty bound really to start talking about these issues in a very coherent way, with, like I said before, with very practical actions, which is where the Greener Veterinary Practice Checklist comes in. We're starting with veterinary practitioners, but we certainly don't leave out the veterinary professionals working in industry, academia, in NGOs, in teaching institutions, and there's many other roles, and I'm one of them. I don't work in practice, and I can see where this checklist can also come into my own working life as well, and home life. So hopefully there'll be something for everybody. But it's coming out on Friday, so it will be out by the time this goes to press, if you like, and it's in collaboration with the British Veterinary Association, the Society for Practicing Veterinary Surgeons, and the British Veterinary Nursing Association. So it's there's four partners in this who have all approved and rubber stamped this kind of way of working, hopefully, that will inspire some people to adopt new ways.
Is there anywhere? I mean, so I go into work in a practice on Monday morning. Is there anywhere I can access this checklist and just download
absolutely.
it and stick it on the wall?
That's it. It's a downloadable poster and a load of social media tools, but it's also a big web page full of links as well, hyperlinks with where you can go for various specific products or various services to help your practice, help your team. So it's on the Vet Sustain website, which is vetsustain.org, and it will be prominent on there as in the next few days. Yeah.
And are you targeting the corporates? Because I know the corporates are now 80-90% of the total workforce, and so they have the resources, the infrastructure, and structure to drive this better.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, and absolutely. We've been in discussion with lots of them, and I'd say lots of them are kind of friends of Vet Sustain in some capacity. They're a real engine for change. Some of them have got their own sustainability in-house consultants now, which is brilliant. Like they probably don't need help from Vet Sustain, but they've got their own experts on board that have worked in various other sectors on sustainability. Some of them are accredited now or becoming accredited with Investors in the Environment and other accrediting bodies, which again is kind of way of holding their hand through the process. So that's another way that they can do it. But I guess this checklist is for those practices that are not yet on the ladder, that can start to look towards some sort of practical advice. But yeah, the corporates are key. But there are obviously numerous independent veterinary practices that are starting to come to us for help too, that want to make change on an individual or a small chain of practice kind of basis as well.
Wow. This is fantastic.
My mind is just full of things we could ask.
I was going to say, I could talk all night about this stuff.
Yeah.
You're. I'll tell you what, Laura, you're actually giving me hope for the future.
Well, that's nice. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome.
The sort of home activism is very, very important now. So it's I didn't want to belittle that before. It's absolutely key.
You didn't belittle it.
I hope that those people have really inspired me too. You see now in front of your face, if you subscribe to the right channels, and it makes sure that you keep doing what it is that you can do. I have days definitely when I feel quite low about it, and climate grief and climate anxiety is a real thing too. But also I found that by channeling some of that through Vet Sustain, particularly Vet Sustain, which is very grassroots and very practical, it's given me a real purpose actually. And so also, feeling like you can do something that's bringing together a small community, or doing something either whether it's in your family, whether it's in your wider family and friends, in your community, or brought in your profession, or in society at large, whichever level you want to try and influence. I think these spheres of influence are really important to see where you can actually start the conversation. And I've found it easier not to be talking loads to my family and friends about it, quite frankly. I find it easy to talk to our profession about practical things that they can do of relevance to their day-to-day work, because actually talking about climate change when you meet somebody for a coffee during COVID time is not what everybody wants to talk about. It's heavy, really. It's very difficult. And
it is a bit.
Yeah, it is, even though we probably need to do it more and find the words. But I found it easier via the profession, and not easy, but I found it much more palatable and well received. We've had some difficult conversations, there's no doubt about it, through Vet Sustain. But it's been a real boost for me mentally and given me a sense of purpose. So I'd really recommend trying to think about where you can influence. I think it's been good in that way.
Well, it is. I think it's amazing. I think what you've shown us more than anything else is that we all have not only a responsibility. We know that hopefully everyone watching or listening to this knows that we have a responsibility to Mike's grandchildren particularly, but also we can direct change as citizens who consume. If we direct our consumerism to a different type, then the supermarkets will respond because they want that. And so all we need to do is to buy more compassionately, I think is what you're saying, isn't it? With every purchase, every food purchase, we must actually think, how has this been produced? Has it been produced in a sustainable way? Has it been produced in the gold standard regeneratively sustainable way? But if not, if we can't afford that, has it been produced in a way that is least harmful to our view of sustainability? And I think if we can do that, then the supermarkets will recognize that actually that's where they're going to go. So they're not going to produce these 5.5 kilo chickens for £1.50 anymore. They are going to produce 2 kilo chickens that actually are as expensive perhaps as 7.5 kilo ones, but we know that we can eat them with a clear conscience, thinking these have been done using the best possible methods at the moment, and that will all improve.
And I shall write to my favourite gin producers, make sure, because they use sea kelp as their botanical, and make sure that the sea kelp they're using is sustainable and that those sea kelp beds are regenerating.
Absolutely. Sea kelp's the way forward though, isn't it? Sea kelp will
what, in gin?
Generally the way forward.
Generally, sorry.
I love that gin, but generally sea kelp has, I think, the potential to reverse a lot of the carbon dioxide buildup throughout the world. So
yeah,
tastes awful other than the sea kelpie gin.
Yeah, brilliant. So you're up for the 60-second CPD challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So okay, right. I've got my clock ready. Hang on.
Right.
I've got my clock ready. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right. So this is fantastic. So Laura Higham, you're going to give us 60 seconds CPD on what was your chosen topic?
On how a veterinary practice can go green.
Brilliant. So
Okay.
60 seconds on how a veterinary practice can go green, starting now.
Okay, so there's 4 points four steps that you can take. Firstly, practice responsible resource use. So go renewable, recycle, reduce your single-use plastics and responsibly source paper, and make a sustainable procurement plan. Secondly, be sustainable in your operation. So look at building design and adaptations, minimize your use of ecotoxic chemicals, enhance your green spaces for biodiversity, use low-flow anesthetics and avoid nitrous oxide, promote animal welfare, promote welfare-friendly and sustainable agriculture amongst your clients, create a travel policy, support active forms of travel to work, so cycling and walking, choose virtual CPD and meetings. Thirdly, use your medicines responsibly, so conduct antimicrobial stewardship, avoid drug wastage and dispose of drugs properly. Fourthly, empower and sustain your team, so support staff wellbeing and development, create a green group and adopt good veterinary workplace policies. 2 seconds over.
Well, I think the 2 seconds were a little bit of stuttering, which is allowable, and that's fantastic. Wow, that's amazing.
I mean,
Absolutely
it takes
wonderful.
time to get to grips with all those things. Don't get me wrong, that is a lot to do, but you can take it in your own time.
I am so glad. I'm so glad. In many ways, I'm so disappointed, and so glad in so many ways that we didn't do that at the start, because in that 60 seconds, you have covered a cornucopia, a veritable encyclopedia of things. We've touched on a few of them this evening as we've worked our way through, but that would have had us talking till I don't know.
Yeah, it would have taken a different direction, wouldn't it? But
we could just talk and talk. Before you came on, Mike and I were chatting about what we should ask you about, and you hit on all of those and more.
That's absolutely amazing. Well, you've delivered an amazing 60-second CPD. Have you, Julian? Come on. Have you delivered? Have we got a CPD certificate that people can?
I've got a CPD certificate.
So we can present this to the RCVS then, can we?
We can present this to the RC. Oh no, we can't yet. Well, we can't yet because we've had CPD, but we haven't fulfilled the RCVS requirements for the certification. We haven't reflected on that CPD.
Okay. So are we going to reflect on it and then do the certificate?
Shall we reflect and then do the certificate? Let's
Laura,
do that.
Would you join us in a moment's reflection on the fabulous CPD? Bless you.
Bless you. Bless you. We're not just generally blessing Laura. Laura sneezed.
Laura sneezed. She covered it up.
Quite
yeah. That was magnificently covered. Although
great.
I'm sure as a medic, you are aware that if you suppress a sneeze, then the intracranial pressure can reach critical levels, and you can do yourself a lot of harm.
It was worth it just for making sure the podcast flowed. But now we've spent some time talking.
It's very good of you. Thank you very much for risking.
Consider yourself being told off by Grandad. Yeah. Let the sneeze go.
I'll never do that again. I'll let it go next time.
Let it go. Yeah.
So
Let's
Laura,
reflect,
would you join us in a moment's reflection on the CPD that you so very generously have provided for us, please?
Of course.
Fantastic. Thank you. Join us in reflection.
As ever, I feel we need to apologise to listeners.
No. They get music now.
They get music. Okay, well,
yeah.
Stuff you then. You get music. Fine.
No, they get
just
music.
Just reflect.
Fills in this bit that just because we're not talking, they just get music.
They get what sort of music do they get?
Well, I suggested that they should get some heavy metal thrash music.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Anyway, let's have a look at the CPD certificate, Julian.
So here we go. Here's apolitically the CPD certificate.
What we got?
So it says Certificate of Higham Education.
Very true.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
This certifies that each and every one of you lucky people have had your brains drilled and filled in yet another veterinary ramblings.
Totally blown, to be honest with you, Julian. Not drilled and filled.
Do you know,
bloody blown.
If I had a chance to rewrite the CPD certificate during this evening, I would have done so, because we've not touched on it. I know in your interests, you mentioned beer. So here's our local beer.
That's nice.
This is
Wards
this is the local one. So this is the Snowdonia beer. This is great stuff.
Yeah, but Wards and Stones are local to Sheffield.
Yeah. I like this Snowdonia.
As part of the Biology Society, we used to visit them every couple of months.
Did you?
Yeah.
Beer is good, people. Beer is almost always sustainable and very good. Local beer is good. Here's a sheep, a picture of a sheep. So
generic sheep.
Sustainability comes in. This is me climbing, and that's me climbing, and that's me climbing. So the rest are mainly climbing. And I'd hope that we were going to touch more on the climbing, because Mike never lets me chat about climbing. I always try and get it in, and he always
Julian.
Sorry.
How could you do that? Sorry. We have learned all evening.
I know.
About thinking of others.
Yeah.
And about the small steps that we can take.
No, these are small steps. These are small steps. Look how close those steps are on this mountain.
Yeah, I know. That was probably before you got airlifted off the mountain.
It was immediately before, yes.
Yes, exactly. So
shortly off.
Yes, okay. We've heard that story before, but we've learned tonight how we can all take some small steps.
Baby steps, not big steps like
like this one here. That may not make a massive difference on our own lives, but will all contribute to helping the planet carry on spinning through the...
And we can then all have better time for climbing, can't we? And better mountaineering. You're absolutely right. What a huge, I think it's been a very positive evening. I think we've learned ways that we can all take part in stewardship of this planet and actually eat more sensibly. So what was the term again? Eat better.
Less but better.
Less but better.
Eating less
I
but
like
better.
That. As opposed to the normal rugby club, more but worse. Eat less but better. I really like that.
With increase of alcohol intake, exactly. Goes quite the opposite way.
No, absolutely. Have you got a joke for us tonight then, Julian?
I've got a joke. So I don't know whether you know this, Laura, but about this time of an evening, I tell a long rambling joke, and then Mike usually aces it with a funnier one afterwards.
Okay.
But imagine me as a slightly taller Ronnie Corbett, but less funny. And I was...
Oh, that was brilliant. And you got it all in about 10 seconds then, Julian.
No, that wasn't the joke.
That's fun.
No, that wasn't. Okay, no, that could be the joke. No, I've got one. But so this was it's about the time that my wife sent me out to get some bread late at night. She was pregnant, she was starving. She wanted me to get some bread, so I popped out and passed by a pub, and I thought, well, I can probably pop in for a drink or so, not a problem. So I popped in and got myself a drink. And as I walked along the bar, there was this gorgeous girl sitting down there. I thought, no. I'll be good. I sat down with my beer, and lo and behold, the girl came over, started chatting. I said, hey, yeah, big boy, she said to me. So it's not about me now. Hey there, get me a drink. So we got to chatting and got a few drinks down our belts, and lo and behold, off to her house, and next thing I knew, we were making love. Well, after that, I must have fallen asleep. I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning and thought, oh my God, what am I doing? This is awful. It's absolutely awful. My wife is going to kill me. So I woke this girl up and said, look, do you have any baby powder? She said, what? I said, do you have any baby powder? Or baking powder, just a talc, something like that. She said, yeah, I have. Yeah. So I rubbed it over my hand and said, right, thanks for that. I'm off. Bye-bye. And I ran home. And my wife was waiting there with a rolling pin. She said, what the hell have you been doing? And I said to her, well, I'll be honest, darling, I went to the bakery, the all-night bakery. I stopped off at the pub, had a few drinks, met this gorgeous girl, and we were making love until about 3 a.m. And she said, hold out your hand. So I did. She said, you bastard, you've been climbing with your mates again, haven't you?
If that was not such a poor... No, I'm not going to waste that. I'm not going to even grace that with any... That is just so wrong on so many levels,
It's
Julian.
wrong. It is wrong. It's wrong.
That's appalling.
I know. Do you expect anything more of me? I mean, what have I let you down in some way?
No, I can't dignify that with any response whatsoever. I'm not telling infidelity jokes because that's not what I'm like.
The only other joke I had was a rude one. I won't tell that. So there we go. Laura, you put up with the joke. I'm sorry about that. I can only apologise.
No, I thought it was pretty good actually.
But thank you so much. What a great night. It's been fantastic, hasn't it?
Thanks, guys. No, thanks for having me. I'm really grateful that you've asked, and it's been really nice to talk about things that I find interesting. So yeah, thank you very much.
No, it's been a super show, and I have to say that Laura Higham, thank you very, very much for joining us on Veterinary Ramblings. And if you've enjoyed what we've been talking about this evening, please don't keep it to yourselves. Share it. Share it, click like below, subscribe. You can pick us up, as you know, by now on Spotify, iTunes, Facebook, YouTube. Just get involved, because the topics we've been discussing tonight actually involve all of us. So please do get involved. And if you have any questions or any communications, send them in to us, and let's take them. And we'll do what we can to help. Laura Higham, thank you very, very much indeed. It's been fabulous having you on, and we'd like you back.
Thanks, guys. Consider it done.
Thank you
Brilliant.
very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And come and visit Newcastle with us.
Will do.
May your dog go with you.
May your dog go with you.
I got my fingers wrong, actually.
It should be like that, shouldn't it? It should be like that.
No, it's his first finger.
Is it the index?
It's his index finger he lost.
All right.
Yeah.
So you know why we do this, Laura?
No.
After the late great Dave Allen,
Okay.
who would always say, "May your God go with you,"
Oh right.
and we just changed it to "May your dog go with you."
Very
But since we changed it anyway, we can change a finger, can't we?
Yeah, fair
Quite
enough.
awkward,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it? The first one. Yeah.
Yeah. May your
Cheers.
dog go with you.
May your dog go with you.
Laura Higham, thank you very much indeed. May your dog go with you.
Thanks, guys.
So,
Yeah.
as I'm saying to you, we've just scratched the surface here.
Yeah. Tantalisingly scratched it.
Tantalisingly scratched it. And I'd love to deep dive into some more of these topics with you, because it's well, what is it? Grist to the mill.
Aye, more grist at mill.
Aye. No, I absolutely loved it. Absolutely.
Oh, very good. Yeah, good.
Thank
It's
you.
nice to see you both. Nice to meet you both. Yeah.
And you.
And I understand which one's which now. By the time 2 hours down the line, I think I've nailed it.
We're both the same. We're both the same.
We're gonna have to see if we can get that kept in the
Yeah.
twins. You know, that'd be just awesome, because you're the only person that's had the guts to say it.
Yeah.
Everyone else is
Mind you,
calling you Mike Julian.
yeah.
The Castell's entity, who is Mike Egan.
Yeah. Which one's Mike? Which one's Julian? Yeah. No, I love it.
They're both the same.
Love it. Laura, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very
Thank you.
much indeed.
No, thanks very much. No, that's
Been
fine.
a real treat.
Pleasure. All right then. Thanks, guys. Yeah, nice to meet you both, and keep in touch.
Take care. Thank you
care
very
then.
much.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.